Welcome to the Sci-Fi Diner podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Herzog.
Good evening. I am Miles P. McLaughlin.
I'm Chrissie Ravensberger.
And I'm Dave Sellers.
Yes, and tonight we are talking about the next incarnation of the Star Trek franchise. Section 31 dropped last Friday, and we had a chance to watch it over the weekend, and we're going to share some of our initial thoughts, what we thought were some strong points and what we thought were some of the weak points of it. But if you are a lover of Star Trek, you will want to tune in here because we're going to give an honest review from two people that are, I would argue, some of the most diehard Trekkies I know. And Chrissie, you don't consider yourself a Trekkie, do you?
I mean, not really, no.
I mean, I like Star Trek, and I've watched everything. I was talking to a student about it who was talking to me like, he came up to me, he goes, you watched all the Star Trek. Like, he had watched everything, like original, Enterprise, down. I said, well, I didn't finish Enterprise, and then I never watched. I watched some of Lower Decks. I never watched what was Prodigy. I never watched Prodigy, but he had watched all of them, but Section 31. So this guy was.
I want to know this student.
Oh, I'll introduce you. Yeah. So Jason, Mr. Lead, Ben Lead, I think his name is. So, but just a fan. But so we were just having a conversation about it. But I know like he would be someone I would say is probably a diehard Trekkie, and good for a younger generation. But me, I'm much more casual fare in it. So
I get into things. I think the fandom I'm probably most passionate about in science fiction is Star Wars, but even that, I wouldn't consider myself like a die-hard.
Right.
I don't really do fandoms, and that's not a knock against people who do.
Yeah.
It's just not me. I have too much ADHD. I'm all over the place.
Yeah, so let's start talking about this. Maybe we should talk about before we talk about the movie. When we heard this was dropping, what were some of our expectations? Maybe walking into this, and try to not look at it in light of the movie, but what your expectation was when you heard there was a Section 31. When you heard Michelle Yeoh was kind of there, working at it. Yeah, so Miles, why don't you go ahead and start us out?
So originally, the idea was to have a Section 31 series. I think that announcement came out shortly after Discovery, and then not long after they said, you know what, we think we're just going to make a one-off movie. And
now, were you disappointed by that? Were you looking forward to maybe them doing a Section 31 series when you heard that initially?
I was not enthusiastic about Section 31 series.
And may I ask, why not? Because I mean, Section 31 is always like the gritty underbelly of Star Trek. So what about it didn't? He said, Section 31, I don't really care about it.
So Section 31. I don't hate the concept of it if it's used sparingly. I think Deep Space Nine used it in the right amounts, and it was also something that nobody really heard of Section 31, and so when Discovery utilized it, I was disappointed because it was like, oh, they're just another branch of Starfleet or the Federation. They're they're a bit shady at times, and but it was like common knowledge. So, there's this ongoing battle: what is better, new Trek or older Trek? And so when I heard that there was going to be Section 31 TV series, I wasn't thrilled about it because Section 31 is not about it's not Star Trek. It's Section 31 is this morally gray, morally ambiguous organization that it's like we do whatever it takes to defend the Federation. We'll do the dirty work. We'll get our hands dirty, and you'll never hear about it. And the way it was depicted in Deep Space Nine, I thought, okay, that It was in small doses, but it was the right amount of doses, and that's the way it should have been treated. Discovery, try to make it a regular thing, and I thought, no, it just doesn't work. And it's not Star Trek. Star Trek it's about exploring the human condition, asking the hard questions. It's about big ideas, and getting philosophical. Sometimes there's great space battles. Star Trek does space battles just when it comes to the big franchises, just as good, sometimes better than everybody. But it's not even about the space battles. It's about the big questions about what it is to be human, and maybe sometimes thinking outside the box. Things aren't always what they seem, and so to make Section 31 the idea of it something normalized, I thought, it was a blight. It was a blight on Star Trek. So when I heard they're just gonna do a one-off movie, okay, that could be interesting. I will, I'll withhold judgment until I see it. And then when I heard all the reviews, it was like, okay, I probably should lower my expectations a bit and try to find the good stuff where I can.
All right. Chrissie, you have a question.
Well, I have, I'm like 90% with Miles on most of what he was saying. Although I will say that when you said that, Star Trek is about the human condition, is not Section 31 part of that exploration of the human condition?
I was going to say the same thing.
I'm a therapist, so I deal with the darker side of the human condition. And so that, I feel like it could be, not what we got, but what it could be is legitimate exploration of people who are willing to do the quote unquote get the hands dirty, and at what point does that morality cross lines, and where does one draw the line? And that is an interesting exploration that could be done in a longer series, and I kind of feel like maybe they could have done it more justice, because the movie that we got,
which we'll get into in a little bit here. Dave, for you, Miles, do you have any response to that?
No, I enjoyed the pushback, and I don't think you're wrong. Sometimes it is, that moral gray area. I think Deep Space Nine did a good job of exploring that, and it was in the right doses, and it was also, when you see Cisco make that decision to involve the Romulans in the the war against the Dominion, he's struggling with that decision. I mean, he gets to a point where he says, "I'm okay with it," but you see him, him torturing himself throughout the whole episode of everything he has to do and everything he's complicit in. So, I'm for exploring the dark side, and maybe trying and exploring doing the wrong thing for the right reason. But I think it has to, but there's in Section 31, there does need to be any kind of struggle or self-reflection. Like, oh my God, what did I just do?
exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because I think when you look at the breadth of Star Trek and what we typically have gotten, Discovery aside, you get even like Strange New Worlds, very morally reflective of the culture, something of honor. And you definitely are missing that in Section 31, and perhaps in some of Discovery as well. But Dave, I wanted to get your input. When you heard that this was dropping initially as a series and then as a movie, maybe even before you probably got rumors earlier on that this was going to be a part of the Discovery verse. What were your thoughts? Like, what were you fearing? What were you hoping out of it as you look toward a Section 31?
Well, much like Miles, I tried to have a little bit of hope. When we talk about the actual movie here, and I had a lot of time to think about my reaction and how I felt about this movie today. Chrissie, you're gonna love it because it's raw and personal.
Ooh, tell me more.
But I did not have any really hopes or expectations because we just came out of Discovery. Yes, Michelle Yeoh is a tremendous actress. The character of Giorgio is a good character. But seeing the trend line that was going with the stories and the writing, I had no hope that I was gonna fall in love with this. Now when they switched it to a movie, that made me feel better because like, okay, I'm gonna be stuck with 2 hours of this or maybe, and that's it. That was a bit of a relief, but still, it carries the name Trek. It's in the franchise line, and there's always a little bit of hope for me. But I knew it was going to be what it was going to be.
Yeah. That's not what you said in the last podcast, I'll mind you.
Despite all of the dishonorable commentary in my absence last week.
We were just reading what you sent in, Dave. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about.
Try to get inside your head, Dave.
Feklar will feast on your ashes and that level of dishonor.
Greatly, sir.
Yes.
If you haven't listened to the last episode, I was not here. I had a migraine there, and these guys really had some fun with me, and it shan't be forgotten anytime soon.
I honored you in your absence. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But for anybody who's listened to this long enough, you listen to it, and you will certainly find the humor in what is said. But
yeah.
So you're still practicing for the talent show, right?
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I think what he should do is sing the song that opened up Section 31. Because that would be perfect. Can you imagine him coming out, white flowing gown, singing?
He would be an angel.
He would. This would be perfect.
Beautiful.
There is not a soul on this earth or in the afterlife that wants to see that on either side.
Finally, Dave found something to unite us all.
Yes. Chrissie, how much? Tell me about what were you aware coming into the movie? What did you know much about it?
Jack all. I knew absolutely nothing.
Okay.
Because I didn't watch Star Trek Discovery. I didn't watch a lot of that stuff, and Dave didn't really make me want to jump to go watch it. So, I think I'm even a little bit pickier about things than even Dave is.
Well, see, you got to understand this about Dave. If someone slaps the word Star Trek on it, he will bitch and complain about it, but he will watch it.
Because I'm a whore.
Exactly.
Exact fan behavior that I waggle my finger at and say, Dave, every time you watch this stuff, when you know it's crap, I'm
enabling it.
And then they're going to continue to give you crap.
Right. So you are the reason, Dave, Section 31 exists. I just want you to know that.
But listen, I don't know if it's going to be crap until I watch it.
Yes, you do. You know enough to know.
But then I would have missed out on Strange New Worlds. No. I would have missed out on Lower Decks. I would have missed out on
those sweetheart. You gotta let this go. It's not good for you.
This is like therapy session with Chrissie tonight.
Well, just wait. It's going to get better. Just wait.
No, that's what they all say.
No. I mean the conversation. The therapy part is tonight.
That's Star Trek.
Yeah. So.
No, that's not.
So from my perspective,
more.
Yeah, let's hear your perspective.
No, that's fine. I had no expectations. I didn't know much. I'd watched Deep Space Nine and like the references to Section 31. It kind of intrigued me. Um, in some ways, Section 31 for me was as mysterious as the Hands of Blue Men from Serenity and Firefly. Like you don't really see them, except to make casual appearances here and there. And I remember running across a novelization called Section 31. Like, I don't know how long ago that came out. Yeah, that was a while ago. So I knew there were like novels in the universe, but I hadn't read it. Did you read? Did any of you guys read the Section 31
Oh yeah,
novel?
I read them. Yeah,
So did you like those novels?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
So
it can be done right.
yeah.
Well, were those novels revolved around like a single operative like Sloan?
I think Bashir was featured prominently in a Section 31. One of the one episode where you had those 4 people, that those other augments, and the one augment that would, she was kind of we'll just say autistic for lack of a better word.
Oh yeah.
She becomes like a partner to him in the Section 31 books.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I never read, like I was aware these were out here, but I went in with I didn't know what to expect, and so I didn't go in with very high expectations, I guess, to begin with, right, as a part of it. So yeah, that's kind of my thought. I didn't. I was actually kind of looking forward to it because we hadn't gotten. Well, it's been a long time since we got a live action Trek because of the writer's strike. And so it was kind of interesting to, have something fresh. In fact, I went up to Dave Thursday before it dropped. I'm like, I thought this dropped Thursday. And then it said like you had to pay an extra for it. And I was like freaking out. And then it ended up being nothing. It was fine. But
I would have been pissed if I had to pay extra for that.
yeah, you would have. So
On a sport bottle for me for paying extra for it.
that's right.
And
And Dave, but we got to understand something. Dave would have paid extra for it because exactly.
He's the part of the problem.
Stay away from the street corner, Dave. The street corner called Trek. Stay away from that.
You just gotta stop. Just stop.
So let's leap into it. Let's go. Yeah. So let's get into the movie proper. Do we want to start on the things that we thought went well, or do we want to kind of, since we kind of been hinting at it, some of the things that maybe weren't that excited about?
Okay, so this is what I'll say is something in its favor.
Okay.
We got some backstory on Giorgio and how she became the emperor, and so that was interesting. Just the backstory with her. You kind of think, okay, what circumstances creates a person like this, and what kind, and then you see that she has to, if she wants to be emperor, she has to, willing to sacrifice her family.
Yeah, that scene was incredibly hard to watch. Like you're like, and I thought, wow.
I will say, like, the opening scene was actually pretty brilliant writing. Like, if you don't know this character,
Right.
that scene tells you everything you need to know about her.
Right.
And it does in a way where, yes, there is some info dumping and some exposition, but it's a natural exposition. And, like, it gives you just enough information for you to fill in all the blanks that you need to without her having to do it.
Right.
And then her actions speak to what, like, it shows like a quick flashback, and it shows you here's what she was, here's what she is now, here's the trajectory of where she's going. Brilliant writing.
Yeah, and I actually and I agree with you. I like that scene, and I liked how that scene tied into the end story, right? That they kind of build upon, and this guy that she thinks is dead comes back, and it's this battle that he becomes kind of the villain. Which what was that?
Which was obvious who stole the weapon as soon as it got introduced. But anyways, moving on.
Yeah, well, so I actually didn't pick up on that, maybe, but I did. But it makes a good, like, that part of the story arc for me was not necessarily problematic.
No.
Yeah, because I felt like that story, and I think for me, I think that the story in general wasn't a terrible story. I think that the issue, and I think Dave and you and I kind of talked about this. The issue is they put the word Star Trek on it, and Dave went running, like he typically does. But so for me, when I looked at the movie, I said there was number one, there was very little that reminded me of Star Trek. Okay, the transporter beams, the maybe some of the ships, but as a general rule, like this could have been in any universe, right?
It. I honestly felt like the story that they were telling about her came from like a different movie that someone had started, and then they just took those pieces and shoved them into a Star Trek movie, because I was like, what the heck? Why is this over here so much better? And then like we get into this other movie and I'm just like, what am I even watching here?
You were watching a Fifth Element remake. That's all.
You know what? The cat I agree with.
Yeah, well, so like the opening opera scene, like, or like that. I was thinking Fifth Element. Oh, they just took this straight from Fifth Element.
It really, I don't know. Like, did someone write this during the writer's strike, thinking that like they give it to an intern? I don't know. Like, that's the only explanation I have.
Yeah. Dave, you look like you want to say something.
Well, so, and it's been kind of my whole thing with all the new Trek, right? Growing up in the 90s when we had TNG, DS9, and Voyager at the same time, I'm getting the action figures, I'm getting the toys. I got a buddy of mine where we're drawing control console layouts on pieces of wood in our tree forts, and we're playing this all the time. It was a great time growing up to be a Trek fan. I equate it to having it to growing up and having this best friend when you're a kid. And as you're growing up, you get to a point where your lives diverge. Like, we hadn't had new Trek for like almost 20 years. And it's like your friend going away and you not seeing them for the next 20 years. Now they're back. But it's not the same. It's not your same friend that you grew up with.
Right.
Every now and then, you're sitting around sharing stories, hanging out, and you're seeing glimpses. You're getting some of that feeling back again. I equate that to like Strange New Worlds and Picard.
Right.
But it's not the same friend anymore. Yeah. And it leaves you feeling sad.
So do you think then, Dave, that this is like a one of the issues is the nostalgia piece playing in to the modern Trek, that someone who didn't grow up with Trek coming to this is going to see this, maybe like we can't, because as I was telling my students, because we were talking about something totally unrelated, but I said we were talking about Allegory of the Cave, and like when you go out and you see the light and you encounter and you come back and you can't see it any other way because you've been exposed to it. But for someone who may experience maybe this for the first time, this might be a slightly different feeling, right?
Exactly. This from Discovery to this, and I'm afraid with other stuff that's going to be coming out in the future here, this is not written for me. This is not written for people like me. Sure, there's going to be enough of people like me who are going to enjoy it, who are going to like it. I mean, I'm certainly not going to not watch it because I want to see what's coming. I want to see how my old friend is growing up. But it's not written for me. in the case of this movie, like Section 31, that was Miles hit it right on the head earlier. This was an organization used sparingly. When they used it, it was one guy recruiting one guy, and it was so compartmentalized. It was so secretive. Now I've got a team of people running around, blowing shit up, blasting it, everything in the world. Nothing in that in this movie, besides the occasional insignia on their little Mission Impossible, here's your next mission thing, had anything
stupid.
Yeah, had anything to do or resemble Star Trek. Even the ship architecture had nothing in common with anything in Trek, at least from what's supposed to be in that time period. It was so disconnected. I have no problem with the movie, the plot, any of that stuff. I really have little problem with that. It was a good heist movie, but there have been other better heist movies.
Right.
And this one you just slap the Trek logo and name to, and something came up lacking on both sides of it for me.
Yeah. Although I feel that had they stuck it with a smaller cast, it probably would have actually been a better movie.
Oh, if they would have stuck to just a single character, and honest to God, not even Giorgio, her personality and that character, I don't think would have been proper for that type of role. But just somebody who, and you could have made a series with it. You could have done a lot with this, that every so often they go into their closet or open up a Foot Locker, and there's their neatly folded Starfleet uniform, and they just kind of reflect on what they were before, the dirty deeds they got to do now, and all of this stuff, all the espionage, all the secretive things. You could have made a very good, like, Jack Ryan, Jason Bourne-ish type of series out of this.
I would have stuck around.
I would have been all about that.
So picture this: Picard's son. Section 31.
Okay, now we're talking serious stuff here.
Right?
Now we're getting here.
Yep.
Like,
reflecting on not honoring his father, struggling in his legacy, working undercover, already kind of in the underbelly.
Right.
Brilliant.
I could swallow that.
All that vortex sticking around him? Yes.
Yeah. But we go back to the Terran universe trope.
Instead, we got a B-level heist movie at best. Mm-hmm. And the problem is with all cast ensemble movies is it's so difficult to meaningfully introduce the ensemble without getting bogged down in all the introductions. And for some stupid reason, they introduced everyone twice.
Right.
Why did you do that?
Yeah.
They introduced everyone first in her little interrogation scene. And then I guess when she was interrogating him, and then later on when he was interrogating her. And I'm just like, what? Why did you waste time doing that? Did you think that we all were these characters so bland and stupid that I wouldn't? Well, actually, I guess maybe I didn't need twice because I can't remember half their names because I was so damn bored.
What's interesting in that when you look at, like, I was thinking as you were mentioning that, like, ensemble heist movies, you have Ocean's 11, right? And some of them, you have maybe some of the
Italian Job,
the Italian Job, right? Or the Fast and the Furious. I was going to say, like, you have ensembles that are made up, but these movies, Fast and Furious is Fast and Furious 11 or 12 they're on now, and Italian Job had more than one movie, and then Oceans had a couple of them. Not all of them were good, but they had enough time that you developed them, and they weren't playing in a universe with expectations. I guess Italian Job, there was an older one, but I had never watched that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like,
that Giorgio, the Godsend, great name for a weapon. I might add.
Yeah.
But
And I like the whole. I like the whole play as a God's end or God's set because it's kind of the same.
I actually didn't like that because I'm sitting there going, you're really telling me that in X number of years, English hasn't evolved to the point where those two words aren't able to be played off of each other?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a very complicated language.
Yeah. Well, Miles, we haven't really heard from you. I'd like to hear a little bit, like some of your thoughts as we kind of dissect this movie a little bit.
So, I don't think I hate it as much as Dave and Chrissie, but I get the criticisms, and I think the criticisms are valid. They tried to ground it in Star Trek. They put a character that we got to meet in yesterday's Enterprise, Rachel Garrett. In the bar scene, Giorgio's one of her assistants is this being from an original series episode called "Let This Be Your Last Battlefield," where the two aliens.
It was adorbs, BT dubs. Anyways.
So he's half black, half white. The only thing was, I thought, and Dave, you can help me. I thought that species was all dead. But by the end of the episode, I thought the two guys.
They were the last two.
Yeah, and so there's a little continuity problem there. I mean,
maybe they were brought over from the mirror universe. Just saying.
Again with the damn mirror universe.
So, and that's another thing. I think the mirror universe. Even Deep Space Nine was accused of going back to the mirror universe too often.
Yeah.
And maybe they did, but Discovery really glommed onto it, and especially bringing a character back and kind of making her a supporting character throughout the series. I think with some of these things, like Section 31, it's good in small doses. I mean, it's great to but maybe it's too much. And I mean, Michelle Yeoh. I mean, she's an Oscar award-winning actress. She could play anybody. Find it. Create a different character for her. I guess for me, what is if you're going to make some live-action Star Trek, Paramount and the powers that be need to start listening to fans about what they want. Nobody wanted this. I think we want to go back to something similar to Strange New Worlds,
right,
where we talk about what Star Trek is supposed to be, what's supposed to explore, and it can explore the morally gray and at times, but that's not. But that can't be. I've heard this movie described as dreadful and joyless. I'm not sure it's quite that bad. I mean, some of the characters I did like. The guy who was the Comaloid, I liked him. He was kind of funny. The alien, the sentient microorganism that was running this Vulcan-looking android. I thought that was an interesting concept. These sentient microorganisms.
See, you can't even remember the names.
What's that?
You can't even remember the damn names.
Oh, I only saw it once. I mean,
right.
I mean, the character's name was Fuzz.
Fuzz, Flux, whatever heck's name was, I don't know.
And the Comaloid goes back to there was a Comaloid character in Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country. So
okay.
They tried to sort of ground it in Star Trek, but it wasn't Star Trek.
Well, let me ask you this, Miles. You said this is a Star Trek no one wanted, but that's not entirely true because obviously someone wanted it. We wouldn't have got it. The people involved in Trek, the people vetting it, the people that were kind of behind it. Well, so like, if the fans absolutely didn't want this Trek, would have it gotten made, or did they want Section 31? But this isn't quite what they expected. I mean, I don't know. There's a couple things there because I think that you could have made. I think that you could have made an interesting Section 31 movie, or series for that matter. You don't you ground in the underbelly. You put as we said, a main character like Picard's son as a central character, and let's go do it. Like the story of Section 31 to me is interesting because number one, I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for Bourne type movies. Like I just love that. The underdog, the underbelly of everything that's running it, and better yet, make this in the future where Section 31 has been outlawed and he's like a rogue agent. Let's go all Bourne on it. Like I buy it, right? Because I absolutely love the Bourne movies, and have some complexity with as we said, with his father. I don't think the idea of Section 31 is terrible in my book. But I hear what you said, Miles, like in small doses, right?
Well, it's not Star Trek. I mean, Section 31 will work for like the Bourne Identity or the Fast and the Furious.
But let me devil's advocate. Could it be Star Trek? I mean, we had very unfamiliar ships. You had a universe, but this could maybe not the moralistic maybe it wouldn't have the moral code, maybe. But I think that you could explore human condition through the underbelly of society.
The only problem is there is no balance. I'll go back to the episode of the Pale Moonlight. I mean, throughout the episode, Cisco is torturing himself over the decision he's going to make to bring the Romulans to the war. He's going to be complicit in theft, bribery, murder, and maybe he loses a piece of his soul at the end of the episode, but at least you see that struggle throughout the episode.
But you could flip it in Section 31. You could have him being, pure evil and struggling with maybe good isn't that. I mean, you could have him trying to right the moral road and being unable to.
Dave was shaking his head, but that's what I thought they were trying to do with Georgia's character, was trying to have her character arc go from that innocent girl to being that tyrant towards redemption of some kind. But I also didn't like the way they were doing it, because I'm just like, her stopping this is not erasing the atrocities she committed, people. That's not she's not a good person. And maybe I'm missing something because I didn't watch the series she comes from. But no, I didn't. I think that's probably maybe one of the reasons why Miles didn't like, and he correct me if I'm wrong. But that right there, that underlying moral message, is in conflict with the underlying moral messages of previous Star Treks. So the underlying message that I got from this movie is in conflict with the rest of the series. And that, I think, is a core issue.
Beautifully said.
Its values do not reflect the rest of the values of Trek. Even Lower Decks, we can all say, doesn't feel like your classic Trek. But I didn't have a problem with it because I never felt that it undermined the morals and values of Trek. It was just this is just how, the non-officers, the enlisted people act. This is just what, if you ever met, military officers versus enlisted people, you kind of know. You expect that. So, Lower Decks is, we are not going to sit around and drink tea and postulate things and discuss philosophy, that's just not what we do. But I never felt like it undermined the values and morals of Trek. This movie, I didn't feel shared those values, and I kind of didn't like it for that reason. As a Trek movie, I didn't feel like it belonged as a Trek movie. I didn't feel like people who wrote it understood what Trek is. And it's not to say old Trek versus new Trek. This is simply not Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're expressing a lot of fans would resonate with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And
I have no problem with the movie itself for its own thing. It's not Trek.
I guess when you look at moral rectitude of it, right? There is a way to do an underbelly story like this well. Like I think about, and I think Disney, despite its faults, at some times has executed on this beautifully. Like I think, for example, the movie Cruella, where you examine the evil character, you understand why she became who she is, right? Or Maleficent, right? You get an exploration into that, and you may or may not like those movies, but I felt like it gave me an understanding, and the movie was more about the descent into that and what made them. Like we briefly touched on this in this movie, but you could have focused an entire movie on Giorgio's descent into the piss poor emperor she
I would
was.
have watched the hell out of that.
Right.
And when I saw glimpses of that, I was like, why am I not watching that movie? It's like when I was reading Mistborn, and I was like, why am I reading about another much awesomer story than what I'm reading?
Right. Dave, your thoughts?
So, I hear everyone's thoughts on the moral dilemma between Section 31 and Star Trek, and if it doesn't reflect this or that. Since Deep Space Nine, when we were first introduced to Section 31, I am not going to lie. Sloane was one of my absolute favorite characters. In the 2-3 episodes, whatever it was that he was in that show. Listening to him talk about Section 31, what it was, and then everything that's kind of come after that, it made me really think. And Deep Space Nine was the perfect platform to release this. I mean, the galaxies of war. War is an ugly, bloody business. And it made me really think a little bit that while you have this utopian society that is massive, it's massive, bordering against other empires that do not hold their same idealistic views, there has to be a shield of protection there that people aren't going to know about because their morals will not be able to palate it. That they will not be able to savor that taste and understand it and accept it. But it's a necessary bit for the security of the Federation. I understood that when he brought that up, because if you're the big boy on the block, someone is going to want to take a shot at you. If you're the little king on the block, someone's going to want to take you over. That is a real geopolitical, real universal principle that you cannot just be allowed. No one is just allowed to exist. Look at the problems we have in our lives right now. No one is just allowed to live their lives the way they want to do it. Someone is always trying to gain influence and power over you. Section 31 in Star Trek has been, to me, the guardian of that. The ability that the Federation can live the life and in the society that they want. So the great tale for me would have been that individual age operative, like a Sloane, who is out there putting his life and everything at risk, strategically finishing his objectives, completing his missions, doing whatever dirty, horrible, immoral thing needs to be done so that everyone else behind him can sleep at night. That and that individual's struggle at the beginning would have been a great start to it, trying to morally justify it in their own mind because they grew up in this. This is not what you do. Fighting that moral battle in their head to be able to take that step to do this, to assassinate this Romulan,
and then struggling with it,
and struggling with it until you get to the point where you've become calloused, and now this is your duty. This is what has to be done, and there is no other way. And with every story like this that I've ever heard, that story never ends well for that guy. And him maybe being found out by his own people, maybe being arrested, put on trial, and sacrificing himself because he knew and believed what he had to do. He did what he had to do for the protection of everybody else. That level of heroism, I would call it.
Yeah.
It is a tale that never gets old for me.
Or having some sweet girl suddenly bring an element of humanity back into him.
Correct.
And I think that's what I was trying to say is missing from this story.
Yes, absolutely.
There doesn't seem like there's that moral struggle. There doesn't seem to be that we crossed the line. They're literally like just sitting there like, oh, you committed atrocities. Let's toast and have a lovely little fun. And oh, I might murder you all here.
You do that so well, Chrissie.
What the fuck is that? Like, geez.
And no one knows that you've done what you've done.
Right.
No one can know. There's no record, nothing.
It's literally like a jaunt. I felt like I was watching a worse done Suicide Squad of all things. I was like, I'm talking about like the first one. First off, his introductions were terrible. Like, you may as well just be like, this is Katana. She has a sword that like collects souls of people. Like, really, come on. Sorry.
Yeah.
Terrible movie.
Yeah.
Only at least Suicide Squad didn't bore me. I literally was bored.
But you know, without like to me, the whole premise of having something like a Section 31 makes it a little more real and a little more complex. You know, that whole universe, just a little bit more, a little more savor to it, a little more meat.
Yeah, I was going to use the word realistic, right? Because, I mean, the utopia doesn't exist. Like, there is no such thing as a true utopia, right? And this idea that somehow Trek lives in that, there has to be and you saw this a little bit in Picard, right? A little bit of the seedy underbelly of Trek. But
now, I don't want him to live in that world.
No.
Because that truly does take away from everything else that show has tried to promote and exemplify it and demonstrate that we can do a lot better than that.
Well, and it flies in the face of Gene Roddenberry's intent for it.
Correct.
So, it doesn't carry forth the literal legacy of Trek's creator. And I understand that once a creator dies, you know, all sorts of things that, you know, I'm also looking at you, Lord of the Rings, brings up power, bring up someone. Anyways, we don't have all night for my rants and raves.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
I just think if they would have put it in a different time period, different characters, different writing. I mean, the premise is great, but execution.
Much like episodes 1 through 3 of Star Wars, very excellent premise. Execution terrible.
Except that, to be fair, those movies have aged extremely well. When you go back to when you look back, like Hayden Christensen, like I don't want to get too much into this, but Star Wars, the first 3 movies, everyone dogged them, and then they put out the sequels and said, you know what, the prequels look pretty good, and then people learned to love Hayden Christensen. They weren't perfect movies. No one's going to say they're perfect movies, but
no, they weren't.
But
and they at least didn't have blatant like. Good God, the plot hole in this movie! I was just cringing the whole time.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way that like for me anyway, like Discovery and all that made Voyager and Enterprise so much better for me, because even though they're some of my least favorite of it all,
they're still better than Discovery.
they're still better than Discovery. Like it
Again, them lowering the bar should not make you lower your bar. Keep your
But
standard.
maybe you don't know what you have until someone shows you something worse, and then you're like, oh, you know what? This actually wasn't that terrible.
And that's part of it, because back then too, like I'm coming off of Deep Space Nine, right? Like Deep Space Nine and Next Gen, the two, you're not gonna get better than Trek series right there to me. DS9 is still by far my favorite of them all. Followed right with Voyager, and then settling down before its 20-year hiatus with Enterprise.
Don't settle.
Look, it's not settling. It's, for me, coming off of it at the time, perspective has changed, and rewatching it now, I can recognize more of the things that I love about Star Trek in those shows than I did back then, because of what I was coming right out of.
Yeah, and you know, it doesn't.
Sense?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that these were perfect shows. Like, you aren't saying that there's not flaws, and that they certainly maybe weren't as good as Deep Space Nine or Next Gen. But
He wanted every Star Trek to be 5 stars.
I liked Voyager. So
Yeah.
I liked Voyager too.
I liked it.
Yeah.
It wasn't my favorite, but I liked it. Now I like it more.
No, it only still gets like 3-4 stars. It does not get the 5 stars the other ones get.
So I have not been paying attention to the feedback on this. What's being said about this in the greater Trek community? It's been out all of 4 or 5 days. What is the general response? Is it all absolute negatives, or any positive out of it? Like, what's coming out in this cantankerous universe we call Trek?
I saw a meme of a dog taking a crap on the Section 31 movie logo.
Did you create that, Dave? That's what I want to know.
No, I did not create that one.
Oh, that one. Well, which one did you create? No,
nothing involving this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I guess we could look it up on Rotten Tomatoes and see.
Miles, what have you been hearing, and what have you been seeing?
So I'm going to read a review from Keith DeCandido, who has written several Star Trek novels and his own stories too. Folks are saying regarding Section 31 that finally there's a movie worse than Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. Sorry, no, Shatner's folly doesn't get off that easy. This is not to say that Section 31 is good or anything. For starters, The Final Frontier took the entire supporting cast and the 23 years of characterization and trashed it in order to make the lead character look cool. Section 31 didn't do that, mainly because only one character has history and is consistent. Both movies have a lead of a certain age, but still doing physical things. William Shatner was 58 when he made The Final Frontier. Michelle Yeoh was 62 when she made Section 31. I had no trouble accepting that Yeoh could do all those things Giorgio did. I didn't believe for a nanosecond that Shatner could do any of the things that Kirk did. Most importantly, though, there's nothing in Section 31 that was disgustingly offensive and stupid as Uhura's naked fan dance.
Yeah.
Okay. He's not wrong. So that was his opinion. Another opinion, another author. He hasn't really written much in Star Trek, but it wasn't favorable. And most of what I'm reading some that are, like saying it was good for what it was. It was like, a good, like you're talking like a Bourne movie, or
Fast and Furious, but I think I think the common theme is this just isn't Star Trek. I mean, it's in the Star Trek sandbox, but it's not really Star Trek. And if you're gonna spend, I mean, this cost. What's the most expensive Star Trek movie? It was maybe 30 or 40 million, and that's a lot of money. But by today's standards, that's not a lot. That's not a lot of money in making a movie. Make something the fans want to see, and I just think there is a disconnect between Paramount, Kurtzman, with the fans as far as what we want to see. I mean, now we don't dictate. We can't tell them what to give us, but at the same time, we can tell them whether we like what they're giving us or not. And they're just not hearing us. And I think Star Trek fans are the most vocal fans out there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they had these resources and they had these good actors to tell a good story in the Star Trek world. And like I said, Section 31 should only be used in small doses. Yeah. And I'm not sure if it's the right thing to carry a movie.
I will agree with Dave. I did like what he said about, it hasn't, like, the new Trek hasn't all been bad. Like, it had some, we sort of liked Picard, although some people complained about the earlier seasons of Picard. I loved it just because it was Jean-Luc back, all 3 seasons, but the last season certainly carried itself. And then Strange New Worlds has been a breath of fresh air, and that came out of Discovery. And so, that introduction to Discovery, like, I'm glad for that. There has been some good, what I would call decent Trek coming out. This was not necessarily one of it. I was just looking over like some of the review headlines. It was like, please stop doing Trek. Worst Star Trek movie ever. Awful, but at least it's short. Not Star Trek. Worst Ocean's 11 sequel ever. Yeah.
And I gotta say, when Miles said the review, the thing of like, it just wasn't a Star Trek movie. I'm like, it objectively wasn't even a good movie.
Right.
The introduction to the ensemble sucked.
Yeah.
There was a huge plot hole. It clearly needed a biosignature.
Right.
Okay.
Giorgio's backstory was probably the best part of it all.
It was.
That was brilliant. I loved that. It's the only part I loved. But the rest of it absolutely sucked. I'm like, okay, so they needed her biosignature. She was stuck on the planet. Why did you even need to go after the heist? They clearly couldn't activate the thing without her.
Yeah.
So unless they happened to go get her mirror in this universe, which would have been
She was already dead.
Well, there you have it. So I don't even know why it was a threat. She they didn't need to stop him from using it because he couldn't use it without her anyways.
Yeah. I like, I have some more headlines if you want to hear them, or like titles
please.
or reviews. Nobody asked for this movie and they were right not to. Nope, just nope.
Thank you.
Well, whatever it is, it's not N9T Star Trek. I know what that means, but
What was it?
N9T.
N9T?
Yeah, maybe it's a typo. There are no words. John Wick in space. 2 stars because Michelle Yeoh is the reason for not getting 1 star. A wasted opportunity.
Wasted opportunity. I like that.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Oh yeah. I might buy the DVD just so I can burn it with fire.
Ooh, I like this guy. What's his name?
Someone told AI to create Star Trek by Disney.
Oh, burn.
Yep.
Burn.
I'm a Star Trek fan, but what was that? The franchise hits warp speed into a dumpster fire.
Considering there was a literal dumpster fire on the screen, yeah.
Yeah. WTF. Written by a 12-year-old who has never seen Star Trek. Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff. Paramount did this on purpose.
So they would stop after making Star Trek stuff. Is that why?
Yeah,
they're permanently
exactly.
filming it?
I expected nothing, and I was still disappointed. Here's one for you: Trek by Timu. Yep. See, this is just these are just
That's good.
great.
I have one, Scott. It's from Robert Greenberger,
Go ahead.
author. We get to see with cons. Not to pile on, but since I forced my wife to watch it last night, I wanted to share our disbelief. Star Trek can be allegorical, action-packed, or character-driven, but should never, ever be this devoid of, Star Trek. Section 31 has seen the best Deep Space Nine stories explore the moral gray areas of the Federation, the decisions made to protect the government and its people, its agents work in the shadows, behind the scenes, and recruit as needed. What the Section 31 film did was ignore all that in favor of something generic and, dare I say it, boring. A waste of Michelle Yeoh and probably a death knell to future such films.
Yeah, no doubt.
I thought he was going to say when I forced my wife to watch it, now she's
Right.
divorcing me.
Yeah.
I thought that's the way he was going.
Yeah. There was one here I wanted to give it. Oh, it's as if the 70s barfed over a high school of Rebel Moon. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love the
It's not Star Trek. It's a generic sci-fi flick in cosplay.
Okay.
Goodness, the nerds are out in
They
force.
are out.
I thought I was quick-witted, but this is good
Yeah.
stuff.
Star Trek Holiday Special.
Yeah, that might qualify.
Yep.
Goodness.
That's harsh.
Oh,
Yeah, there's some great ones.
should comment back to that one. Shut up. Don't give him any ideas.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Someone has invited the Romans in Star Trek. It's
That's
Carlo
right.
Jesus. The salt. I love it. The land will be barren after this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
That's good.
yeah, that's probably enough, but so but yeah. Yeah, just very good. Just not very good, but
So it sounds like it's been generically panned.
yeah, pretty much, but
Yeah.
a new low for Star Trek, but that doesn't yeah.
It
Or this is not your mom's Star Trek.
It's not even our Star Trek.
It's not-
Right,
yeah.
right.
Star Trek was never my mom, so I'm not really sure where they're even going with that.
When you think it's bad, prepare to free fall another 50 floors. But so yeah. So anyways, those are just some of the reviews out there, and there are many more. If you want to have a lot of fun, just go down through the reviews, and all you need to do is look at the titles and just scroll down through them. There's a lot more, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more. So I guess coming it up, I did have one question. Robin Curtis making an appearance there at the end.
What?
Jamie Lee Curtis?
Jamie Lee Curtis, sorry.
Oh yeah.
What'd you think?
Why?
Yeah.
Also, you are a super secret operatives. What the fuck are you doing listening to confidential information in the middle of a fucking bar? I would be fired if I did that. And that's just HIPAA. That's just client confidentiality, not literal, black ops shit.
And you're a secret operative. Why are you even showing your face on a hollow?
Exactly.
Exactly.
The amount of stupidity in that plot just boggled disbelief. That's why people say, "Oh well, it could have been a good movie if they hadn't labeled it Trek." No, it's fundamentally a bad movie based on the plots.
Just watch any of the 50 Mission Impossible movies.
Those are much better.
They're much better.
I don't know what did they give it to an AI? Was this like written?
That's
during
what
the
someone
writing?
said. Someone said. Well, so let's I guess let's walk out and let's give us our thoughts about this movie. Let's give it a rating, which I know that everyone's like after last episode, Dave I thought would have given it like 5 stars, but let's talk about where we kind of rank it, um, and maybe also share. Do we think this is the low point of Star Trek? And this is maybe the other conversation to have as part of this. So, Miles, I'm going to let you respond first. How do you rate it? And do you think this is the low point of Star Trek?
I'll give it a 2 out of 5. And is this the low point in Star Trek? I would say, so Star Trek 5 was the low point in Star Trek for back then. Star Trek Nemesis was the low point for Star Trek back then. Oh, yeah.
You can
We'll
respond.
argue about that at a future date, but yeah, go ahead.
I will take that argument, Dave. Section 31 is the low point in Star Trek for now.
For now.
I hope, but
he's expecting it to go lower by saying that. Just so you know,
what I really hope is that this is not just a bunch of trolling fans that are crapping on it. It's just if it was good, we would be singing its praises. I mean, when Picard season 3 came out, you couldn't say enough good things about it. So they can make good Star Trek today. It's just, do they want to? So I hope that Kurtzman, Paramount looks at this like, okay, it's time to course correct.
Yeah,
we're gonna run into an asteroid if we keep or a black hole if we keep doing this.
Yeah. Chrissie, how about you? Where do you rate it? And is this the worst Star Trek you've ever seen?
Can I give it no stars? Is that allowed?
Yes, absolutely.
I give this movie no stars. I was bored. It was not a Star Trek movie, and it was just terrible. And it wasn't even one of those things where it was so terrible it was funny to be enjoyable, like when Santa got kidnapped by the Martians.
Do you think that movie was even better?
That movie I was entertained by. This did nothing. I couldn't wait for it to be over. I would have turned it off.
So what we're saying is that Star Trek needs to lower its budget and just... No, I'm just kidding.
It's one of those things where like a movie gets to be so bad, like it becomes comedic, and then it there's this like a little curve where it starts to get amusing because of how bad it is.
Yeah.
This didn't hit that point. It just was bad.
Bad.
And it pissed me off because clearly there was a much better story that I could have been watching.
They're definitely an hour and a half, 2 hours of your life you won't get back.
Nope.
Dave, how about you? Where do you rate this movie, and is this the worst Star Trek you've ever seen?
I'm gonna give it 1.5 stars, only because I like Michelle Yeoh, and I like how they gave a little bit more to Giorgio's tale. Granted, as much as I pan Discovery, I still like that they made the connection and grew that character a little bit. They actually kept some bit of connection there. Is it the low point? If it's not the low point, I don't want to see the low point, because I can't imagine. I thought Discovery was a low point, and this went lower for me. I'd hate to see what the low point is, especially when across the hall you got guys writing Picard. Next door to that you got the guys writing Strange New Worlds. There is so much good there. This should not happen at all. It shouldn't. From a business perspective, from a fan perspective, this should not be allowed to go. But I also understand that, again, like I said earlier, I want my old friend back.
Right. Right. Dave said Star Trek can't go lower. Paramount said, hold my beer.
That's it. And I'm like, no, really, we're good, bro.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
don't
watch it anyways. But he's part of the problem.
Because I have to know if it's gonna be worse.
Right. So where I'm at with it, I wouldn't have said So I watched all the movies, and unlike Miles, I did not mind Nemesis. Nemesis is fine for me. I actually thought it was an interesting storyline. I mean, I'm not going to give it 0 stars, and for the reasons that I think Dave gave, I'll probably go with a 1.5 as too, because while I watched Discovery, and there were moments I liked in Discovery, and certainly actors I liked in Discovery, and certainly she was one of them, and was one of the reasons to watch Discovery, right? And so it was nice to see a little bit of backstory getting fleshed out there. Is it the worst Star Trek ever? Probably. And it probably fails not because of, so number one, it's really hard for me to call this movie Star Trek, because it has like, if they would have made it, if they would have, the sets, the ships, if they would have made it look more Star Trek, then maybe. But it didn't even seem like Star Trek as for the most part. So it has that going against it. And so that kind of makes it off the bat not a good Star Trek, but then the storyline itself is really, really poorly written, as Chrissie kind of mentioned. And I think that those things make it, for me, the worst Star Trek, if you can call it Star Trek at all. Yeah.
It's got the title, so we kind of have to.
Yeah.
Do we, though?
Well.
Do we? Yeah.
You could just pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, there are some porn movies with the title too, and we're not calling that Star Trek. Just saying.
Still, probably better Star Trek than this.
Oh my!
Just ignore the fact that there's those Ewok movies that exist in Star Wars. You just don't know that they're there.
Ewok for Endor was an absolutely fantastic movie, mind you.
Did we ever review that?
No, but we should. Punishment.
You know what, Scott? I might have to go do some research and see if that actually holds up.
I'm just kidding. I don't want to get in trouble with your wife because you're watching this stuff. Just saying, Dave. Yeah. Well, listeners, if you made it this far, we would love to hear your thoughts. What did you think of Section 31? And do you think this is good?
Put a poop emoji in the comments.
Yes, put a poop emoji in the comments if you liked it. No, I'm just kidding. If you, we would love, put a GIF of a dog dumping, or something like that, like in the comments on Facebook.
You really want our comments to just be nothing but poop?
Yes. That would be perfect.
Literal steaming pile of shit. You realize that, right?
Right.
I will pin it to the top of the page.
And yes, you will. Apparently.
People from the lower decks run the show.
That's correct.
That's what happens when you have everyone that actually runs the ship in charge. But yeah, well, so thank you so much for sticking with us tonight. Thank you guys for sharing your thoughts. It was great to have this conversation with everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So any other thoughts here, last minute thoughts about Section 31 before we wrap up the show?
I think we covered it.
Yep. Covered it in a steaming pile of poo. All right, Miles, why don't you take it out of the show?
Until next time, good night and good luck.
We'll see ya.
Fingertips the table.
I would say go boldly, but after this, just don't go.
Yeah. Yeah. If you need Clorox cleans everything. You bleach your mind with Clorox, get the stain out.